The image of the warriors from the Heian period is quite different from the image you would normally have of samurai. The way of the warriors, the loyalty, and in the Kamakura period, friends becomes foes and foes become friends. There was less loyalty and maybe less chivalry as well. During the Yamato period, the imperial family gradually consolidated their position in society as descendants of the sun goddess Amaterasu. And that was also written down in the chronicles, the Kojiki from 712 and Nihon Shoki from 720. The reforms that were made during the 7th century and then in the 8th century built on the system that was imported and that people had sent envoys to Tang Dynasty China to study the political system as well as Buddhism in the 8th century. Through the hands of the Soga clan and Prince Shotoku, who had a very strong position, Buddhism was introduced as more or less as a state religion in the late 6th century. And Prince Shotoku, he wrote what is called the first constitution of Japan. And it is kind of a mixture of Confucian rules and Buddhist ways of living. City planning was, of course, very influenced by the way cities were made in China. Avenues and streets, very square system, compared to present-day capital of Japan, Tokyo, which was a fishing village, basically, until the late 16th century. The Heian era, or the Heian period, is characterized by the aristocracy getting power and also constituting the cultural bearer of that time. We find the Tachibana family, which eventually lost its position. But then we have the Fujiwara clan, which became the actual powerhouse of Heian period. The Fujiwara family was established in 669 when Nakatomi no Kamatari, one of the major aristocratic families from the Yamato period, received the name Fujiwara from the Emperor Tenji, positioned themselves as a major political force. And they did that by marrying their daughters to imperial sons and thereby getting a position at the court. There were many child emperors, and then the head of the Fujiwara clan at the time would act as the regent instead of the child emperor. They were able to tell an emperor to abdicate in favor of his underage son, and then they would more easily be able to control how the country was governed. They kept that position from late 9th century until mid 11th century, around that time. Gagaku was actually an import both from Tang Dynasty China and from the Korean Peninsula, but it built on music that developed in the capital of the Tang Dynasty China, Xi'an, or Seian in Japanese. It was a kind of entertainment music, or party music even, and that was imported to Japan and formalized into what is known as the Japanese court music, Gagaku. And this became the entertainment probably of the aristocracy in the Heian period. When it comes to literature, poetry was an important part of everyday life. In the collection from 760, there are poems by emperors, aristocrats, bureaucrats, and other people within the administration, probably not from people from the countryside. Calligraphy was, of course, an important part of the educated class, so to speak, and that was mainly for the aristocracy. There was rules introduced that everyone working in the government should be able to read and write properly. Nice calligraphy is something that was established quite early on in Japan. What we know is that they were taxed very heavily in form of rice. Rice was the major monetary unit. Also, you measured wealth in amount of rice. It's believed that they could be taxed up to 50% of what they produced. So most likely to be a peasant working on the fields outside of the cities was probably not a very easy thing. Gradually in the Heian period, shoen or big estates grew, and these big estates, they were exempted from taxes actually, and you had a lot of peasants working in those fields. The development of these shoen also saw the growth of warrior class gradually, because they needed warriors to protect their estates from intruders. The two major military clans that came forth during the Heian period were the Taira family and the Minamoto clan. They gained power as military clans fighting the barbarians up in the northeastern provinces, north of present-day Tokyo. The term shogun is actually a title that was established in the 9th century, big general who fights or defeats barbarians. In the 12th century, the Taira family became the most powerful clan in Japan. At one time when Taira no Kiyomori went away from Kyoto, the Minamoto head, he kidnapped the emperor and tried to install another person as the emperor. Taira no Kiyomori came back to Kyoto and burned down and chased down and killed most of the Minamoto leadership. That is the famous Genpei War that lasted for 5 years. The battle in Kyoto was more like a city warfare, with burning down buildings, trying to chase people away. They would be using spears, a bow and arrow, of course also blades, but not in the way that you would see in samurai movies of a later date. The Fujiwara lost the power partly due to the emperor Shirakawa was taking back the power of the emperor, basically. But he was also the one who invited in the Minamoto and Taira clans, the two major military clans. They helped Shirakawa to fight down uprisings. And they are able to position themselves in the political life, again, by marrying the daughters to imperial sons. And that leads to that the Taira no Kiyomori in the 12th century gets appointed to a high ministerial position. But from the Kamakura period, you have the warriors becoming the politicians, basically. The samurai were landowners and they were establishing their big estates. In these domains, you had the Jito, who was collecting taxes, and you had the Shugo, who was like the police of that domain. The domains developed as semi-autonomous regions because they were collecting the taxes and they were paying the taxes to the central authorities. The idea of this, the loyal warrior, the loyal retainer. This is very much something that was created much later in history, and actually created at the time when there was peace in the country. Fujiwaras were purely, so to speak, aristocratic family, was not a warrior clan to begin with. The shogun was was a general, was a military leader of high status, of also high ability, apparently, because they probably had won battles. The Minamoto clan established the first military political leadership in the Kamakura shogunate in 1185. That's a big difference between what the Fujiwara regions were doing and later on what the shoguns were doing and how they got into power. The topography of Japan is a very mountainous area. I mean, you have the volcanic mountains in the middle of the Honshu, and also in the southern island of Kyushu and the small island Shikoku are also very mountainous. So you can say that they were partly by nature protected from invasion by other regions. That is partly contributing factor to the semi-autonomous governance of the regions. The Mongol invasions had quite an impact on the structure of the society. The Hojo clan, which was the actual leader during the Kamakura period, even though the Minamoto clan was the official shogun, they asked domains to help out fighting the Mongol invasion, especially the one in 1281. The problem there was that the families who had supplied the military forces, their armies, they didn't gain anything. They refused to pay the taxes years, which led to that the country gradually broke apart, and rather unfortunate effect of the Mongol invasions. The early medieval period, which would then count from the Kamakura period, basically. Interesting things to see the build-up of the military power taking control of the country, and also the military class became the transmitter or the bearer of culture. And of course, we cannot forget how Zen Buddhism developed in Japan during the Kamakura period. Also, of course, also a very important aspect of that period.